Day. That's right. And I've got Teddy O to talk to here because Jalas is on special assignment. What does that mean? Why the silence, Teddy O? He's hanging out with the boss, man. You know, when you're hanging out with the boss, you get to do whatever you want.
Most definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
So, Jalas, you better be hanging around with the boss, huh?
He better be.
He better be. Otherwise, he'll be in trouble.
So tell me about this guy.
So listen, man, I tell you, 49 years ago today. So I was 3.5 years old.
I was 0 years old.
You were 0 minus 0 minus 0.
Yeah.
I was 3.5 years old on July the 5th, 1969. So we used to visit my aunt a lot, and she was the head housekeeper at the YWCA right here on Mamlaka Road. It's still there, right?
Still there.
Yeah, YWCA.
Still there, yeah.
Yeah. All those buildings around it were not there, but the YWCA was we used to love going there because they had a fantastic kitchen, they had great food, and she was the housekeeper, so she had her own apartment in there with a balcony, and we used to hang out a lot. So we were there. Mom took us there on this day. And of course, we were doing our usual thing, eating, watching TV, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, people were running in the street. My mom and my aunt were on the balcony, and people were running in the streets.
Yeah.
Helter-skelter. And they were wondering, of course, they stopped a couple of them and asked them what happened. And they said they just killed Tom. This was the word, they just killed Tom. And my mom had worked for Tom Mboya at the National Assembly for a little while. So she knew him. So she broke out crying. She was crying.
She just lost a personal friend.
Can you imagine? She was crying uncontrollably. And we were wondering, who is this Tom guy who just got killed?
Yeah.
Who's this Tom guy? So then later on, it was explained to us. I mean, this guy was the biggest thing since Jomo Kenyatta, I would say. I mean, he was there at the forefront of Kano. He was there at Lancaster House fighting for the rights of newly independent or soon-to-be independent Kenya. Young man, smart, brilliant, American educated. Born in 1930. By 1960, he was hanging out with the Kennedys.
At 30.
At 30, with the Kennedys in Kennebunkport, or where they have their summer home in Boston, Massachusetts.
How brilliant was this guy?
Unbelievable. They believed him. There's pictures of him with John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, correct. Incredible. I mean, this guy was so forward-thinking. He really had this country's vision and future in mind. But then at the same time, him being so close to the Americans during that Cold War time, there were other powers that were not very happy. The Brits, for instance, who were about to give up one of their best and prized colonies, were worried that, we might shift too far to the American side. The Soviets then, Russians now, Soviets then were thinking, Cold War time, this guy is so close to the Americans, could he be CIA? All those theories were coming up. And this guy, I mean, Kenyatta first appointed him Minister for Constitutional Affairs and Justice and Constitutional Affairs, first minister. And then later on, he was Economic Planning and Development Minister after that. And the rivalry between Tom Mboya and Oginga Odinga was stark. Oginga Odinga wanted this country to go the socialist way because he was very close to the Soviets then. Tom Mboya, very capitalist, wanting, a capitalist economy, let the economy dictate for itself. So there was a major rifts within KANU then. And, of course, there was the talk of succession. Kenyatta, 70-something years old, 75 plus 4, about 79 years old, around, in the late 60s. He was getting old. And people were wondering, okay, so the succession politics, who was going to take over from Mzee, once he passed on? And of course, top on the list, Thomas Joseph Mboya. Top of the list, no question about it. But of course, The cartels, the rivalry, the kitchen cabinet.
They had to come in.
They had to come in and say, look, is this the way we want to go? By the way, Tom Mboya is the man solely responsible for the famous airlift. In the late 50s, he realized independence is round the corner. We do not have an educated constituency here in Kenya. We don't have anyone who's educated enough to take over once the British leave. So what do? He called his friends, the Kennedys, and he says, hey, we have young, brilliant, smart Africans who would love to further their education, get a university degree. What can we do? Boom, 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 phone calls here, phone calls there. They started the airlift, giving Kenyans, mostly in the beginning was mostly Kenyans, free university education. One of the most famous recipients of this,
yes,
Barack Obama Sr. Imagine.
So were it not for Mboya, Barack Obama
would still be in Kogelo. Barack Obama, this guy, number 44, would still be in Kogelo. Or maybe... well, whatever. So Barack Obama Sr., Professor Wangari Maathai,
a recipient as well.
Yes. Dr. Julius Kiano.
I remember Kiano.
All this thanks to Thomas Joseph Mboya, TJ they called him. So, a whole wave of Kenyans went to America. Obama Sr. ended up in Hawaii, where he went to school there. And met his first wife and married her, and they had Barack Obama in Hawaii, and then he left her and went to pursue I think a doctor's degree at Harvard. So he left the wife and his young son, and he went to Harvard, found another wife, and married. And that's another story for another day. So Mboya, solely responsible. And by the way, history has an uncanny way of repeating itself. His daughter.
Yeah.
Dr. Susan Mboya, Kidero.
Definitely.
She started the same thing with her foundation.
Yeah, she has a foundation now.
Right? Exact same thing. Helping underprivileged kids to get an education overseas. And they've sent dozens of kids over the last couple of decade and change. Dozens and dozens of kids who have gone on to do fantastic stuff and be employed by some of the Fortune 500 companies around the world. So I tell you, man, the seed does not fall far from the tree, It
doesn't.
Yeah, so on this day, the man returns from an overseas trip. It was a Saturday. He returns from an overseas trip. And he drives straight. He's driving himself. Drives straight to Charney's Pharmacy. Charney's Pharmacy was then on Government Road, Government Road, which is now Moi Avenue. It was on Government Road. And he knew the Charneys very well, who owned the pharmacy.
Okay.
So he gets out of his car. He's chatting to Mrs. Charney outside on the pavement. Chatting, hey, Tom, hey, what's going on? And they're having a chat. Suddenly, Mrs. Charney says, later on, she said, I heard what sounded like a tire burst. And then, all of a sudden, I think she had turned away to walk back into the pharmacy because Mboya had purchased his stuff and she was walking him out, right?
Right.
They chatted a bit. She was turning back to go into the pharmacy and she heard a tire burst. And she turned around as Tom Mboya was falling on her. Oh. In her hands.
Mrs. Chani.
Yes. And of course, blood everywhere. And this man was, commotion, some guy running down the street. It was chaos. Of course, they call the ambulance, they call the hospital, ambulance arrives, and he's been mortally wounded. There's no way they can revive him.
Yeah.
At the same time, the world's most famous cameraman, Mohammed Mo Amin, just happened to be hanging around, the city, the CBD on a Saturday morning, and he heard the shots. Ran straight towards the shot. As everyone was running the other direction, he ran straight towards the commotion, and he found Tom Mboya right there, lying on the pavement, covered in blood. Ambulance comes in. He jumps in the ambulance with Tom Mboya. He's taking pictures. Click, 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 click. He's taking all these pictures. They get to Nairobi Hospital. By that time, it's too late, and he's pronounced dead. But Mo Muhammad Amin is one who got those first pictures the next day. It was plastered all over the world, you know. But it was a sad day. 2 years before, one of his best friends, John F. Kennedy, assassinated in the streets of Dallas, Texas. So Mboya was devastated by that death 2 years before. No, 1963, 6 years before, right? He was devastated by that death. 6 years later, 63, right? 68, Kennedy's own brother, Robert Kennedy, who was running for president, gets assassinated as well as he's campaigning for presidency. Gets assassinated, shot. They were at a convention in a hotel. He finishes his speech. He says he's on to Chicago, the next place, and he was number one. He was touted to win and take over the Democratic leadership. As he's going through the kitchen, you know, alternative route through the kitchen to your car.
Yes.
One of the chefs pulls a gun, shoots him point blank. Robert Kennedy. So Mboya has lost JFK in 63. He's lost Robert in 68.
68, 5 years later.
5 years later. On July 5th, 1969, it's Tom Mboya's turn. A tragedy of Shakespearean proportions.
3 good friends dying in the same
decade. In the same decade. And of course, don't forget Martin Luther King, also 68.
68.
Malcolm X, 65.
65.
Oh, the 60s were turbulent years, man. Turbulent.
Assassination.
Yeah. So anyway, Mboya is killed, pronounced dead, hospital. And then, of course, riots break out. Nairobi and Kisumu. Riots break out. It is madness. 400 policemen are deployed. Mzee Kenyatta calls, immediate arrest of whoever it is, investigation, the whole shebang. 400 policemen deployed. They are plowing. They are combing through the slums of Nairobi. They come up with a guy 72 hours later. Come up with some guy. Nahashan Jenga, they called him. He was a former KANU youth winger who used to extort Indians for money.
All right.
That was his thing. He was a bully around town. Arrest him, and they take him to trial. In the trial, he says, "Oh no, Mboya was trying." One of his arguments, Mboya was trying to overthrow the government, and I had to take care of it. And he admitted. He admitted. And then, as he was being sentenced to death, he turns around and utters the phrase, "What about the big man?" And of course, the prosecution turns around and says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, what about the big man? I'm just the small man in this. What about the big man?" Wow. 49 years later, no one's ever been able to come out and say who the big man was. Of course, there were theories, about people high up in government then.
Yeah.
But nobody has ever come out. Nearly half a century later. Next year will be 50 years since Tom Mboya died. No one has ever come out to tell us, to say something. Who killed Tom Mboya and why? More importantly, why?
In his village there is this mausoleum, and it stands
up in Rusinga.
Rusinga, yeah. There is it's the village is called Luanda Kamasengre village.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a Rusinga island. There is this bullet-shaped mausoleum that stands there.
You're kidding me.
Can you imagine?
As a stark reminder
of
the bullet that felled him.
Can you imagine?
I'm telling you, he would have made a great president after Kenyatta, because he was young. He was 39 years old in 69. 39, can you imagine? Yeah, life, huh?
Moi Avenue.
Moi Avenue was formerly known as Government Road. Right there, man. Broad daylight. He had come back from Ethiopia, there was actually. Ethiopia. So he decided, let me pass by the pharmacy, pick up a couple of things, and then head home. Imagine if he hadn't gone to the pharmacy. If he had gone straight home. All these theories. What would have happened?
Question is, what if?
What if Thomas Joseph Mboya, TJ, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. They're actually having a memorial.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Today?
The village. Today.
In the village or?
Yeah, his brother Paul Ndiege confirmed.
Oh.
Yeah, they're actually doing that today, and, it is the 49th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So they're doing that back in the village.
Oh, nice.
We should go to that village one time. Rusinga Island.
We should, yeah. It's good, huh?
Just take a photo next to the mausoleum.
Absolutely.
Bullet-shaped.
Bullet-shaped mausoleum.
Can you imagine?
Mausoleum. I tell you can't make this stuff up.
You simply can't.
That's what we call a story
a day.